Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash,
I'm Bernice.
and we're not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a rack is.
On today's episode, we're going to be giving a review of some of the action that happened in round 3 of the United Rugby Championship, and we'll also be discussing whether Saracens have they taken it too far. That is a question we'll be asking ourselves at the end of this episode. But to start with, let's talk about the URC. There are only 3 teams who go undefeated after the first 3 rounds: the DHL Stormers, Munster and Ulster. Stormers continue their successful run in the URC by nilling Scarlets 34-0 in Wales. How impressive have Stormers been so far this season, Bernice?
No, really. And I think the Stormers are starting their season a lot different compared to previous seasons. I feel like previous seasons have been a very slow start for them, whereas this season is kind of the complete opposite. They're starting very strong. The Stormers are on a 3-0 win streak and they start their tour off very strong. And I think they can actually walk away with a 3-0 record on their tour because I think they are playing Zebri and Benetton next. Yeah, I think they dominated from start to finish. And the forwards of the Stormers dominated Scarlets, in terms of their scrum and their line outs.
Yeah,
Scarlets
absolutely.
also conceded a lot of penalties, which in turn, set up the Stormers for strong attack.
hmm
Yeah, I thought Evan Roos was outstanding, and he
So
has
good.
been playing very good in the last 3 matches.
hmm
Yeah, I think he scored a try in the first match and now this match as well. So he's been very impressive. And yeah, I
Absolutely.
just think the Stormers are off to a very strong start in the URC this season.
Oh, absolutely. You nil 2 teams in the first 3 rounds, and then even their win in round 2 was fairly comprehensive. Honestly, I've spoken to a couple of, there's a guy at my work who's South African, and I says, like, if you're a Stormers fan and you're living in Cape Town, you are absolutely buzzing. And
Mhm.
uh, I've officially booked my trip to go to South Africa, and we will be watching the DHL Stormers versus Leicester Tigers for the European Championship, even though South Africa, well, you're part of the European League, so you're in the Championship, so you're adopted. So we're going to be watching that, and I am worried, like, as a Leicester fan. I think Leicester's on a rebuild season anyway, even though you never like to say that about the team you support. But Stormers have really come out the blocks, like, absolutely firing. So it'd be interesting to see if they just focus on the URC this season and they think, like, let's just try
Mhm.
and win every single URC game and do as best we can in the championship. Like, they've got some decent fixtures at home in that competition. But for me, they've really put their hand up in the URC at the start of this year. That also goes with Munster. They get a very gritty win over Edinburgh 2019. Edinburgh, I think, too many penalties. They're at the top of the URC for for penalties and infringements. They have 4 yellow cards in the opening 3 rounds. They've conceded 24 penalties, 3 scrum offences, and 2 line-out offences. Edinburgh need to sort that out because they're a good team. They have some really great quality players in their squad. The try that Darcy Graham scored came from a beautiful cross-field kick, a pinpoint precision. We're seeing quite a lot in that in men's rugby at the minute, and they're just tries that you love to see being scored. Munster definitely left a lot of points out on the field, I do think, but where Edinburgh penalised, Munster capitalised.
Yeah, and I think Munster again also off to a good start. I think it it'll probably be very disappointing for Edinburgh because I feel like they somehow managed to almost always get into the top 8 of the URC. And yeah, just I think the penalties that they conceded and the yellow cards that they conceded just kind of opened the gap for Munster, even though it was a close game in terms of the scoreboard. I
Mm,
just think it opened the gap for Munster, and
mm.
Edinburgh led the scoreboard 12-10 at half time, which obviously we know is not a lot in rugby and things can change very quickly, and it's an 80-minute game. Still, I think, yeah, Edinburgh really were their own worst enemy in that match. And I think Munster had the numerical advantage a lot
Yeah.
of the times, and they just made better use of their opportunities in that match.
For sure. I mean, I always think going away to Munster is one of the hardest fixtures in the URC. People, we all talk
Yeah.
about going to Dublin to play Leinster. That's always going to be a difficult fixture, but Leinster have more money than all the other Irish clubs, so you expect
Hmm.
that they're going to have better players, they're going to perform better because if you're putting all of that money into a club, or why aren't you winning? But Munster for me are like the really, really gritty team, one of the grittiest teams in the URC. And I remember
Mm.
working at Glasgow, like we would always say that Munster is like one of the hardest teams to beat away from home because they do just pull it out the bag. And even though that final try that was supposed to take them to 25-19, before they could slot the conversion, the TMO goes, no, try not allowed. So the try is disallowed. It goes back to 2019. We're
Mm.
into like we've passed 80 minutes, but then the ball it's a scrum to Edinburgh. Edinburgh keep going through the phases. Munster concede 2 to 3 penalties, so it was a very frantic ending to the match. However,
Mm.
they just hold it together, and I think that's where Edinburgh has lacked in the past few years. Because yeah, they made the semi-final in the Challenge Cup last year, didn't beat Bath, but where Bath were as a squad and are as a squad this season, well, I'm not being funny. There's a reason they were treble winners last year. If you look at the
Yeah.
amount of money that's in them at a club and the players that they've brought in this season and the players they had last season. But I think that I agree with you when it comes to Edinburgh. We know that they can be good, but they always seem to like fall short of the mark at certain points. And again, I'm not sure why that is because they do have the talent in their
Mm.
squad, but oh my goodness, their infringements, their penalties, you cannot give that many away if they cannot continue down that road. So I think training for the next few weeks needs to be focused on discipline 100%. Talk of the other Scottish team, Glasgow, my team. They nil the Dragons at Scotstoun. Johnny Matthews. There's a saying that the Warriors fans always use say it's death, taxes, and Johnny Matthews. That guy, him and George Horn just know how to get on the end of a try. George Horn knows how to run a line and just get like his hands on the ball. Johnny Matthews just knows how to throw a good line out and drive it forward, and then he scores a try. So yeah, death taxes and Johnny Matthews. So just a tough one for Dragons. Again, they're another team who I think there was obviously a lot of rumours going around in Welsh rugby about how they were going to supposedly cut some of the teams. And that would have been unfortunate because it would disrupt how the URC works as a league and the shields and
Mhm.
the length of the league and the tour nature of the competition as well. But they just don't have Welsh rugby at the minute just doesn't have enough money in its system. The systems they need to sort out fundamentally a lot of their systems. But Dragons are a really nice team. I like there's no I don't know anyone who like dislikes the Dragons, but I just feel like they're a bit like
Mm.
a Newcastle Falcons where they just don't win, but people like them. They're not a dislikable team, but it's just like, what do they have to do to not come in the bottom four? Because I think for the past few years in the URC, they've always ended in, well, definitely the bottom eight and normally within the bottom four as well, which is a shame.
Yeah, it's a tough one because if you look at the previous week's match where the Dragons played the Hollywood Bait Sharks, it was a
Mm,
completely different ball game. And yes, I felt like the conditions were very tough. So on both of those ends, you um it's a difficult one to call. But if you look at their performance against the Sharks
mm,
versus their performance against Glasgow, they'll kind of go, what went wrong? Glasgow really just they dominated also from start to finish.
mm.
And I think in the previous season of the URC, we we were really supportive of George Horn and we are massive George Horn fans. I mean, you like it's obvious why you are, but yeah, we definitely jumped on that bandwagon, and I think he
Mm.
just doesn't disappoint. So the Dragons they made changes to their side, but yeah, I think they set piece struggled a lot. Their scrums, their lineouts, it was just not functioning very well for the Dragons. So it's a tough one, and they'll have to go back to the drawing board to see what they can do. Like you say, to not finish in the bottom four. But yeah, they also had a few disallowed scoring opportunities. yeah, I think it was just a tough day at the office.
Yeah, I agree. But you've got to look at the league stats. So Glasgow top the table with their attack. They have 98 points secured, even though they lost to Benetton the week before from a drop goal from Jacob Umanga, which was quite frankly insane. And also going to Treviso, playing Benetton away from home is never an easy fixture. Talking
Mm.
of Benetton, okay, they haven't won all of their games, but they've won the last two, a clutch win in round two against Warriors, and then a very comprehensive win this weekend. Definitely a team to watch. And Lewis Liner, he seems to be absolutely flying, living in Italy, previously at Harlequins in England.
Yeah.
And he was good when he played in the English league, but I feel like he's really stepped up his game in the back line for Benetton. But yeah, just on the stats with Glasgow, 98 points, 14 tries, and 34 clean breaks, all within 3 rounds. They top the table. But it's not just their attack, which is brilliant. They're second in the URC so far for defence, 480 tackles and 88% tackle success. So you've got a feel for the
Wow.
Dragons. You're playing a team that has currently been very consistent with attack and defence. And I saw some of the comments that came out of Warriors camp after that loss to Benetton. I think they definitely felt that. And
Mm.
they just kind of punish the Dragons, which I'm not sad that I'm saying that as a Glasgow fan, but it is
Mm.
tough on a Welsh side. What do they need to do to get better? I think from what you've said, they need to sort their line outs, just go back to basics, get your set pieces right. Because when you see a team lose out on their set piece, it's like, what have you been doing in training? Go back to the basics and sort that out. Okay, moving on. Leinster got their first win against the Hollywood Bet Sharks. Reaction, Bernice, not happy.
Oh, not happy at all. I genuinely just feel like I'm watching a repeat of last season from the
Oh,
Sharks' point of view.
yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously a great weekend for Leinster. They got their first win. So an interesting stat that we saw was that Leinster have the same amount of losses that they had the whole of the last
Mm,
URC season, which is crazy. So yeah, they obviously selected a stronger side this weekend.
mhm.
And yeah, I think they were just the better side on the day, but I also felt like they made it look easy at times. Like the tries that
Mm,
they scored were so easy defensively. The Sharks weren't switched on. And yeah, I don't really know where the disconnect is at the moment for the Sharks because I feel like we do have the players, we do have the skill set,
mm.
but somewhere something is just not there. And it's really just a repeat of last season, I feel like, because we had that conversation multiple times on the podcast where you just said, yeah, the Sharks win at their best, but we still walked away with the win. Or when we
Yeah.
got to crunch time, which was the semi-final, we
Mhm.
couldn't walk away with the win. So yeah, it wasn't a good performance at all from the Sharks. I have to say Leinster were very good on the day and you have to give credit to them because I felt like
Mm.
they just exploited the Sharks' defensive system and just overall the mistakes from the Sharks. They really punished us. But I mean, kudos to Ethan Hooker for still being the standout player. If you guys watched any of our TikToks or any of our episodes, I've been rooting for Ethan Hooker since day
Day
one.
one.
I think
Yeah.
he's a yeah, he's a fantastic player, and yeah, I was so happy when he played for the Springboks. But yeah, he just really scored that try when there actually wasn't anything on. But yeah, I just think Leinster started very fast and they took their chances, and
Yeah.
their ability to really convert the pressure into points in the first half really kind of set the tone for the rest of the match. I did felt like when the score was 21-5, the Sharks were still in the match, but yeah,
Yeah.
we couldn't manage to then their points on the board. So yeah, I feel like it's disappointing. It was a disappointing tour for the Sharks as well. They walk away with one draw, two losses, and the draw was against the Dragons. So not a great tour. And the Sharks are also playing Ulster this weekend at home. So it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and Ulster are one of the three teams that have gone back to back to back in the first three rounds.
Yeah.
Again, really putting up a gritty performance because in the past few seasons we've not seen the back like last year Ulster were not in the best place. I know they'd had quite a few changes within their wider business in terms of new people coming in at the top of their club. So great for Northern Irish rugby that Ulster are flying. You'd like to say from a South African, or if you live in Durban and you support the Sharks, or in your case live in Pretoria and support the Sharks. I know we've got a whole Bernice has the whole story about that, which you can watch if you go back on past episodes. But one positive thing for the Hollywood Bet Sharks, maybe not the score lines, and hopefully this is something that will give a bit of perspective. They have won 25 scrums and won 13 scrum penalties. They are at the top, kind of in the top ranks in the league this year for scrum success and making other teams concede scrum penalties because, as you've mentioned, you have the players to do the great set pieces. It's just everything else around it. And
Mhm.
I think Ethan Hooker plays with a lot more maturity than the number of his age, to be honest.
Mhm.
And I think since he got that Springbok jersey, it's only made him a better player and made him more confident, which is great. And you want to see that translated from playing at international level back into the URC or whatever league a player may be playing in. But you can't just rely on one person to kickstart momentum. And it's great that his try kind of got the Sharks some momentum. But we know that Leinster start quickly. That is what they're good at. And they are a momentum team. They will strip the ball out wide, but will also use their power game to force teams to concede penalties. And if they're in their 22 about to score, or in opposition's 22 about to score from their try line, 9 times out of 10, they do score that because they either strip you in and then whip the ball out wide, or they just power through you. And
Mhm.
with that momentum, we see them go on to score. Like as we've said in previous episodes, when Leinster were nilled, that was quite a rare occasion because normally they score one try. They don't just score one try; they score one, then two, then three, then four. They are typically very good at securing
Mhm.
bonus points. So yeah, it's a shame that the Sharks haven't necessarily stepped up from maybe where they could have learnt from last season. But let's hope that for your case, particularly, that they will improve and have a good showing against Ulster this weekend. We also had Cardiff win this weekend, tight match. Again, I feel like Cardiff, they're always a middle table ranking team and they can potentially be really
Mhm.
fantastic, but often again, fall short. They're probably in the best position out of all of the Welsh clubs in the URC, and I do think they are a team to watch and could quite easily go under the radar. But for me, would they? Okay, if they had to play Stormers, Leinster, Glasgow,
Mhm.
Ulster right now, would I think that they would beat any of those teams? I'd probably say it might be close against Ulster and Munster and Warriors, but I don't think it would be close against Leinster or the Bulls, for example, because now Leinster have got their Irish boys back after
Mhm.
the British and Irish summer tour in Australia. I'm not being funny. That's a very difficult team to beat. There's a reason that team won the URC last year and why they've consistently got to finals and semi-finals across all competitions. And just one more final word on the Storers. Yuri Mattia, he's been a big point scorer for them so far. 31 points, like individual performance. He has been pulling it out the bag. And yeah, it's easy when you've got a great player who can slot kicks, who can score tries left, right, and centre. Like Lina scored 5 tries this season for Benetton. So I think he's second highest point scorer. But Mattia, 31 points within 3 rounds, I think is incredibly impressive. So a big shout out to him.
Yeah, I think he's been very impressive and he hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities to play for the Stormers. I feel like he had more opportunity in the last URC season and now hopefully in this season as well. But I think he's that player that you kind of underestimate, and he's
Mm.
not always at the top of your mind when you think of a player that plays well for the Stormers or that you would want to have in your side. But yeah, I'd love to see him play a little bit more for the Stormers and hopefully a little bit more consistently because I think then he can turn into a really good player. And he used to play varsity cup rugby for one of the university sides. And yeah, so it's really good to see him get more opportunities in the Stormers jersey.
It's nice as well to hear that it's a conversation that's happening in English rugby at the minute, and it's I know that South Africa's been really big into schoolboy and college rugby, and that's been one of the things that has fed into the professional game. And there's a debate in England at the minute, oh, I suppose the UK, because Scottish clubs and universities also play in Bucks Super Rugby. This is the highest level of university rugby in the UK. The club that I work for has got a partner university, and a lot of, particularly their women, are in the academy and feed through. So it's interesting to see how successful players can be on in a club jersey, maybe feed into their countries and represent their country on the international stage at whatever level that may be, because it is such a great feeder into it. And normally as well, if you're going to college or schoolboy rugby's awesome, like great, it's great, but everyone has to go to school, right? But college or university rugby is great because not only are you playing top quality rugby, you're also getting, I suppose, a wider perspective on life because you're getting an education or you get to meet other like-minded people and different people at those sorts of institutions. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and it's nice to see that educational pathways are also not just happening in one country for big rugby nations, but happening across several different countries. Moving on to talking about one team in the Prem. We've just had Derby weekend in the Gallagher Prem this weekend, and unfortunately, Tigers did not beat Northampton Saints, but they got two losing bonus points, so I can accept that, and we'll try beat them at home. But there's one team that I think everybody knows the name of this team, Saracens. They have swept up trophies left, right, and centre in the past few years. I think a name on everybody's lips in English rugby is Owen Farrell. He's returned back to Saracens after a stint in France, and say what you like about him, like he is a class operator. But from my point of view, it's something that I really wanted to discuss because I thought this was really interesting, and I've seen a lot of rugby fans debate about it. So it'd be interesting, Bernice, to see if it's kind of reached the southern hemisphere or people are aware that this is happening. But Sarries have had a creative rebrand, and I actually think it does look quite cool. They've kind of labelled themselves the original club of North London, which I'm not don't want to sound too biased here, but it's a bit ironic because there isn't any other rugby club in North London. It's like saying the Vodacom Balls with like the original club of Pretoria. I'm like, well, every person who I've met who lives in
Yeah.
Pretoria is a Bulls fan. Like there's literally no, from my knowledge, is like there's no other
No.
big URC club in Pretoria. It's
Yeah.
the four teams in Joburg, Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town. It's like any of those four teams being like we're the original club of this region in South Africa. So anyway, not to point that out, not to poke too hard, but I sit very 50-50 on this one. But Bernice, I'd be interesting to hear your perspective just from briefly like scrolling on socials and what you've seen.
Yeah, I'd actually love to know what your perception is of the rebranding because I know you obviously watch the Premier League and you're more into that, and you obviously have your own team that you support there, which is the Leicester Tigers. And I've seen a little bit about it online, but yeah, I think South Africans we don't have that exposure to the Premier
Mm,
League. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. And yeah, because I've seen a lot in terms of like Harlequins kind of,
biting back.
clapping back at them and
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, it's been interesting to see what's been happening on social media.
It's interesting to hear actually that there isn't as much exposure of the Gallagher Prem in South Africa because there are quite a few
Mm,
South Africans who play in the English League, but there's way
mm,
more obviously that play in the URC, whether it's with a South African
yeah.
team or whether it's with a different team. So I can understand why you've only seen a little bit of it. Can we caveat this by saying that we both actually like when people argue with each other? Like we've had it on our videos where people will
Yeah.
come back with predictions and they'll argue in the comments, and I've had people go like, "Oh, well done, you were right. And then like they almost admit they're happy to admit it, but when we've sometimes got predictions wrong, people are happy to be like, told you. And it's like a little bit of like chalk and
Yeah.
cheese, a little bit of give and take. I think I have two sides to this situation. As somebody who works in as a creative in rugby club communications, I think what Sarries are doing is original, it's different. The only reason I wanted to talk about it on the show is because it's captured people's attention. And if you have any thoughts or opinions about the Sarries creative rebrand and what they're doing on their socials, please drop a comment below because we'd love to hear them and hear your thoughts. But I feel like they've gone a bit too far sometimes with some of their content, and I'll put a couple of them on the screen when I edit this video. So they've really tapped into like pop culture and fashion, and I'm like, that's great. Like, I'm not being funny, that is something that I try and bear in mind with when I'm trying to create content, because you're capturing a different audience. And me and Bernice, we both love a rugby jersey. So who doesn't want to see some content about rugby jersey, right? But they had round one against the Newcastle Red Bulls. So they have recently been rebranded because they've been bought by the Red Bulls because they were effectively in financial trouble. So they're the only rugby club really in the Northeast that's in the Prem, and there's only two like northern teams, Sale and Newcastle, in the Gallagher Prem. So it's great that Red Bull have come in and pumped some money into the club, but that money isn't going to change the quality of the team overnight. Newcastle, I think, won one game in the Gallagher Prem when it was previously the Premiership last season. This is not a team that is beating everybody like left, right, and centre. Saracens are a team who consistently get in the top half of the table. They are a quality side, but they made a video after beating Newcastle at Kingston Park, and it was literally them crushing a Red Bull can. And I think people would be like, a lot of people are like, that's savage. That is so savage. And initially I watched it and I thought, I can see why someone would want to make something like that. And like it's a bit of banter, it's a bit to provoke the bear. But for me, given where Newcastle were as a club and the fact that we've had several clubs in English rugby go down due to financial issues, I personally thought it was slightly tasteless. Now, the Bristol Bears one, on the other hand, honestly, fair game because their head coach, Pat Lam, he is known to stir stuff up pre-games. Like I know that I remember it was the semi-final in the Gallagher Prem last year on the journey towards Bath winning it last year. And Pat Lam was giving it some chat ahead of the game. He's done it with other teams as well. I think Bristol Tigers has become a rivalry that has emerged in the past few years because of some of the stuff that's happened on and off the pitch. So if you're a club who's got a head coach or you've got players who are happy to give it out before a match, to be fair to Sarries, fair play. So they post a video, I'll pop it on the screen for you so you can see it, where they comprehensively beat Bristol at the Stone X. Like Sarries were amazing that day, like so good. Fair play that you have a toy something like plow over this teddy bear. Like, I mean, fair enough. And then ahead of the PWR Cup this weekend, so this is the Women's League. So the PWR is the Professional Women's League in England. There was also a cup during the Rugby World Cup happening. You had Saracens women and Harlequins women into the final. And ahead of the final, they had a graphic that had Pretenders v Holders v Pretenders. Now that's a play on like history because Pretender is like, well, it's in the word, you're pretending to be a champion or pretending to be a monarch or something. And I saw that and I was like, oh, if they don't win, I hope Quins respond. But Saracens women did win, and that was quite a high scoring game, a very exciting game. So fair play to them. If you're going to create content like that and back it up, fair,
Yeah.
cool, good for you. On the other hand, in the Derby weekend, Quins, who had been performing really quite poorly in the first two rounds, like they were up 19-0 against or something like that against Leicester in round two. And for me, I was despairing. Leicester come out the blocks in the final 20 minutes of that game and go on to win. Oh my goodness, my heart, Bernice, it was awful. So they weren't really in, Quins haven't really been in great form, but they've had like Marcus Smith return, they've had some of their Argentinians return from the Rugby Championship, and they shut Sarries down. It was a really good game. It was a close game. But Quins win, and they win comprehensively. So then Quinn's admin put out, again, I'll put the video on the screen so you can have a look, a Saracen's balloon falling, popping, and then the bear and the Red Bull can that were in the videos that Sarries made with the bear like clapping like this and smiling. And I just thought, you know what? Fair play because it creates a conversation. I think Sarries, they've also put some other content out there with their admin moving what I think they've made a winning thing, how they were like going to crush Quins or whatever that may be. They've moved it to a later round when they next play them. So I was like, okay, so you've gone out for the whole year. So, oh my goodness, I don't want to see what they've made for the Leicester one. Please, by God, can Leicester beat them? Because I will be upset when I see that. Anyway, if believe in your team, Tash. But my thought is also, is this for the clubs to do, or should third party creators be doing the savagery? Because I think when you've got like a different brand or an individual content creator, if they're being savage, I think that's fair because they're building up the rivalry. Should it come from the clubs
Mm.
themselves? I don't know.
I think it definitely makes it more personal and more
Mm,
interesting when it comes from the clubs itself because third parties, I feel like there's a lot of third parties that makes memes and that have rugby pages and that makes rugby content and it's just great banter for all of the rugby fans to laugh at. But when
yeah,
it actually comes from the club itself, it's like, oh my goodness, like
they're
they are
doing it.
doing like
Yeah.
yes. So I think it definitely makes it more interesting and it makes it more personal. So I think it will get more attention coming from the club itself because it's very daring and it's very out there. Whereas if a
Mm.
third party does it, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, it's funny and like it will get shares and likes, but when the actual club does it,
Club is
it's
doing
more of
it.
like in your face.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Sarries do a great job at marketing their tickets and like using the structures that are out there to get bums on seats and get fans coming to the game. And games at the StoneX were always a great atmosphere, whether it's the men's or the women's team playing, which is fantastic and exactly what you want from a rugby club. But I don't know. Has it gone too far? If you think it's gone too far or it hasn't, or you're loving this type of content, please let us know in the comments section. We always love to hear
Mhm.
from you. And just before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed. We have now surpassed 350 followers. Like me and Bernice are absolutely buzzing. You guys are killing it. So thank you so much for your engagement and your support. Any comments that you have on this video, any thoughts, whether it's on the URC, whether it's on the Gallagher Prem or any other rugby action, please let us know. If you did enjoy this episode, hit that like button. And if you are new to the page, please hit the red button. Subscribe. New goal, 400 subs. I think we can do it. I don't want to give us a goal
Yeah.
time when we can do it, but we're doing well. So thank you so much to everybody who is supporting our channel. It means a lot. Our social links are below if you're interested in following us on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll be posting on there when we can. But for now, thank you so much for watching another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. Signing off from the UK is me, Tash.
Thank you guys. Signing off from South Africa is me, Bernice.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye guys.